Welcome on in, guys. Tobin here with you. Thanks for checking out the channel. If you guys could subscribe, that'd be cool. If not, go to hell. What do I need you for anyway? If you guys like the content here, you might also like the radio show, which I do with my guy Leroy every single weekday, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on the WQM YouTube page. So check us out there. It is fodder season, and which is not quite whaling season. You know, whaling season is when it's the summer. You know, that is when you sharpen the harpoons. You got to go make moves. This is fodder season. This is when, what are the rumblings? What are the rustlings that are out there for the Miami Heat? Could they get into the game for this guy? For example, you know, you're seeing Brandon Ingram is very likely to be moved by the New Orleans Pelicans. Here's who's interested. And it was some Eastern Conference teams. I think it was like Atlanta, Philadelphia, Chicago. I'm missing one. I think Orlando was maybe another. And then you also have all the Trae Young news that has come out where it's like, Trae Young could be on the block. They could be moving in a new direction. They got the number one pick. What does that mean for them? That's fodder season, right? Whaling season is when it's like, hey, this is happening. This needs to spring in action. And I got to tell you, last year broke me in a lot of ways because I was in the spot where I wanted Damian Lillard on the Miami Heat more than anything. And I think in a lot of ways that bastard Joe Cronin, nobody's better than Scoot. In a lot of ways, he ruined the season because of all that. You know, that we were so jonesing for the Miami Heat to do something new, something exciting. And even though both seasons ended in disaster for the Bucks and for the Heat, and both very similar with their teams being broken, for the Bucks, you know, they still have their championship a few years ago, asterisk ridden as it may be, and they've been able to make the big swings for Giannis Antetokounmpo. They went and got him Drew Holiday when the Heat fan was into Drew Holiday. They went and got Damian Lillard when the Heat fan very much wanted Damian Lillard. Hasn't really resulted in, you know, this did not bear out to be a better year for them, but it was, but it still wasn't the same as with the Heat, because with the Bucks, they can throw it up and be like, well, we didn't have enough time. We're getting used to each other. Dame maybe wasn't quite as happy this year. They can talk themselves into some stuff there. With the Heat, going back with the same crew this year feels like insanity. It feels like you're just tempting of doing the same thing over and over and hoping health will be the thing. I just can't see the Miami Heat being in that spot, which is why it makes fodder season so fun, because now all the options are out there. And last year, I swore I was going to be a changed man because I wanted Damian Lillard on the Heat more than any whale we've ever whaled. I wanted Damian Lillard next to Bam with Jimmy. Felt like a perfect fit. Felt like exactly what they needed. And now, yeah, you know, I guess people could have questions about Damian Lillard's health, his age. Is he still in his prime? Is he still that guy? Does he move the needle like that? If you told me Damian Lillard became available again for the Miami Heat, I would definitely be into that. Obviously, you know, the price isn't the same because of the age, because of all that stuff. He still makes a ton of dough. You know, there was reportedly Heat had reservations about his pay. I whatever. I wasn't into that. Yeah, he makes a lot of money. Go in, push the chips in, and make it happen. But this is going to be very interesting this summer because there's a couple of things the Heat have to navigate, right? First off is the Jimmy Butler contract situation. Are they going to end up paying him? Their public comments about that don't seem very keen on it. However, Jimmy Butler did another commercial today with John Leguizamo for some clothing line, I guess. I don't know. Doing another commercial. Hasn't really had any retort on social media about the whole Riley thing. He's kid, pretty even kill. The only thing that we've had is Jimmy Butler's agent, who took issue with the Miami Heat navigating it like Jimmy wasn't available for games. And this has been a very sensitive topic. Jimmy's agent has been very vocal about this. He was mad at Stan Van Gundy for bringing this up on the broadcast multiple times. And Stan has had it out for Jimmy as far as this game's play thing. But the one thing I'd say with Stan is you can't think that it doesn't come with any element to things that he's hearing from the organization. What I mean by that is anytime Stan Van Gundy has a game for the Miami Heat, that dude is hobnobbing with former Heat folks like crazy. Like, he is talking to the broadcasters. He's talking to the coaching staff. He's obviously very close with Caron Butler, his former player, Andy Ellisberg. A lot of those guys. He spent time with the Heat, very close with Spo too. So there's no way, as he ends his year and on the Heat's broadcast saying you can't expect Spo to work miracles, there's no way that there's not some kind of true feelings that have come through. And then we obviously got the comments from Pat Riley afterwards. So I bring all that up to wonder about when this year does get into the rumor mill and get into the weeds, where do the Heat's plans stand as far as building around just Bam, or do they still stand about building around Bam Adebayo and Jimmy Butler? So, for example, there was a report/rumor today on First Take about Kevin Durant. And Stephen A. Smith is making it known that Kevin Durant is unhappy, right? Which is basically like saying the sky is blue. I get it. Kevin Durant always appears unhappy. He was unhappy on an all-time team in Golden State. He was unhappy in Brooklyn. He was then unhappy with all the trades that he demanded in Brooklyn. He was unhappy after they fired the coach they told him to fire in Brooklyn. And he has a year in Phoenix and yet, again, still seems unhappy. But one man's trash could be another man's treasure, and one man's disgruntledness could be the Miami Heat's advantageousness. And so when the Heat were trying to get in the game for Kevin Durant, when he was requesting a trade and making a stink last summer, and they really it went nowhere. And then once he again was talking about wanting to get out of there, it was Phoenix and it was Miami. Now, things have changed for Miami. They were not a finals team this year. They were a first-round exit team, but it has been a team that has been linked to Kevin Durant before. They got a meeting with him back in his initial free agency from OKC, where he met with the Heat brass. Le Batard had told you that Spo apparently really impressed Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant is going to be on the Olympic team this year with Bam Adebayo and Eric Spoelstra. And one has to wonder, are some things going to go down? Because it's tough to ignore that the last time there was Team USA action, that it had to do with Bam Adebayo playing with Damian Lillard. And wouldn't you know it, a couple of years later, who wants to go play with his guy Bam Adebayo? Damian Lillard. So it's interesting from the standpoint of, with the Miami Heat, let's just say they got in the game for Kevin Durant again. Do the Miami Heat go at it and say, we want to do this, push our chips to the table, almost do a Suns-like move and figure out the salaries and give some young pieces, with the idea of keeping it Bam, Jimmy, and KD? Or if the Miami Heat were to get in the game for Kevin Durant, does it look something like, we're not keen on giving Jimmy his money, we'll pay Kevin Durant the rest of his contract and put that next to Bam Adebayo, but the salaries match up? Would the Miami Heat and would Phoenix even be into the idea of completely shaking things up, having maybe a little bit better of a basketball fit, bringing some more defensive tenacity to their team? You have a guy and a crazy-ass owner who would be cool giving Jimmy Butler his money and seeing how that would work out. Would there be some kind of a shakeup that would work there for the Miami Heat? That's going to be the interesting question. First, I don't even know if that gets it done. I don't know if the Suns are going to be even into giving up on Kevin Durant, because they just gave Mike Budenholzer a whole lot of money. My read on it is, unless Kevin Durant makes an absolute crazy stink about this, not just Stephen A. rumblings, that they're probably going to try and run it back and see if it works with maybe some tweaks here and there. But if it doesn't, and let's just say Kevin Durant does what he has done, which is hightail it out of there, or try to find a way to hightail it out of there, do the Miami Heat go about this of trying to add somebody of Kevin Durant's age to Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and do they think that's good enough anymore? Or do they feel like the shakeup has to be, no, we swap out needle mover star, put him next to Bam with the youth around. That's going to be an interesting thing to see how this whole summer plays out, because the contract question isn't going anywhere. So once we get past the season and we get into July and that becomes the official time, we're gonna have to realize that. And there was that mention earlier in the year when Jimmy was out that the Heat are looking to add somebody more on Bam's timeline, which was always interesting because it was always, hey, who's the go-to guy you could add next to Jimmy? So for Woj to mention that, I don't know if that's coming from somebody in the Heat. People say that Woj doesn't have sources in the Heat, whatever. It was an interesting thing to bring up, that the Heat are well-positioned for this summer and that they want to add somebody on Bam's timeline. Who is Bam obviously close with? That all of a sudden then goes to, a Donovan Mitchell question, but I'll respectfully keep that where it's at right now because Donovan Mitchell has the chance to go even things up with the Boston Celtics and see where that series goes. But the KD thing, I think, brings about an interesting question because he has been a guy that the Miami Heat have had their eye on for a while, obviously. They've swung and missed multiple times on it or haven't even gotten to step up to the plate at certain times for it. But if they were interested in getting into that game, should he become available, does that become pair Kevin Durant with Jimmy and Bam? Or does that become, no, it's pair just KD with Bam? And are the Heat fans into that? That's the other thing is look, you can say what you want, who you think is the better all-time player. Yeah, it's Kevin Durant. He's won multiple finals. He's won an MVP. He's won a couple finals MVP. Fine. But I am always of the, your guys are your guys, right? And Jimmy has done a ton for the Heat organization as far as production is concerned and bringing them to a certain level. He has not gotten them over the hump. He has not gotten them to that place, but Kevin Durant really hasn't been that close since, the series against the Bucks. It hasn't gotten close for any of his squads. So do the Miami Heat think that just swapping those guys out, would that be enough, or would it have to be the trio? I tend to believe that if you're going to do something like that and bring in Kevin Durant, it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you're pairing him with Jimmy and Bam. And then you got to figure the rest out, and you got to trust the Heat organization and as far as working these things out. And that'll probably leave the cupboard a little bit bare because of the move you have to make. Age-wise, stylistically, timeline with Bam, it doesn't all line up perfectly. But it is going to raise some interesting questions about how the Heat attack this summer with regards to what do they think their long-term future looks like with Jimmy Butler? What do they want to do as far as building the roster around him, if they do, or if it is all around the center of who do we put around Bam? Because, yeah, look, if the Heat are going into this thing with a question of availability, Kevin Durant's had some pretty major injuries. He has had some concerns. You look at his stature physically, maybe they're not comfortable with a move like that. But when I heard that today on First Take, I was like, that's gonna obviously pique some people's interest if Kevin Durant actually is going to become available and make another stink.